Hey guys, I always ask what superhero or supervillain do you want me to do a video about? I always get the same people. Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, Hulk, and Captain America, and so on and so on. All the villains, it's just pretty much anyone that appeared in a movie. There's so many great heroes and villains, but people don't know because there's not a movie of them, or at the very least, there's not a very good film of them. Like, most people thought Daredevil was a rubbish superhero because of the terrible movie. And then they saw a TV series and go, oh, actually, he is really good. That's why I decided to do my list of my top 20 favorite supervillains. Now, if I talk about a supervillain you never heard of, I don't want you to think, don't know who they are, don't care, I'm gonna move on. If I just talk about somebody that you know of, like the Joker, I'm probably not gonna say anything new. Like, what can you say about the Joker? It hasn't been said a million times. But if I talk about a character that you never heard of, you might be going, that sounds like a really cool character. How have I never heard of that? Hey, can you do a video about that? That's kind of my mentality of why I'm doing this video. Let's get started. Drakon. Constantine Drakon regularly fights Green Arrow. What makes a great villain is somebody that makes the hero's ability redundant. Green Arrow is the greatest archer in the world. What can Drakon do? He can catch arrows. It doesn't matter how many Green Arrow fires at Drakon, he'll just keep catching them non-stop because he's just that fast. He looks so easy to underestimate. He's short, about 5'4", wears glasses, and he usually wears sandals. I love these kinds of villains because you can't beat him the normal way. Green Arrow defeats his bad guys by shooting arrow. That won't work in this guy, so he needs to outsmart him. The next time he comes across Drakon, he has to find another way to outsmart him. The tactic has to be different in every story, which keeps their interactions very, very inventive and prevents it from being stale. The light is reflecting on my head, so there's actually a rainbow on my face. It's hurting my eyes. Am I gonna go blind? Amanda Waller. Outside of comic fans, pretty much nobody heard of her until she appeared in Suicide Squad, which is weird because she actually appeared in Green Lantern years ago. Amanda Waller encapsulates corrupt bureaucracy. Also, she has the perfect look. She's short, she's black, she's overweight, she's middle-aged. That's 4 reasons you can easily underestimate her, and she worked her way up until she was the personal advisor of the President of the United States. To get that high up on the ladder with that many limitations, you know she had to get really dirty. She will screw over anyone she has to get what she wants. She will not back down from anyone. She has marched right up to Superman, pointing in his face and say, don't you ever talk down to me like that. Is that understood? That's the kind of person she is. Nobody would do that. Morlun. Morlun is the most physically intimidating villain that Spider-Man has faced. Morlun is a vampiric being that feeds off totems. A totem is an organism that draws its power from other animals. Since Spider-Man has the abilities of a spider, Morlun is naturally drawn to him. Pretty much every supervillain fights Spider-Man because he's interfering with their plans. But Morlun, it's just hunger. That's it. It's not personal. He just comes at him without a shred of anger, which makes him far scarier. People don't realize how strong Spider-Man is. Spider-Man can lift 20 tons. He barely ever uses it because if he mishandles it, he can easily kill somebody. Morlun's pretty much the only person he fights that he has to use all of his energy on. Juggernaut. His super ability is he is literally unstoppable. The main reason I love Juggernaut, though, is that it was the first time where I realized that you could beat a supervillain by outsmarting him rather than physically fighting him. You need to remove his helmet and then knock him out with psychic powers. So as a kid, I was like, oh, okay, I never thought of that. I just thought you could always beat them up. I believe when he appeared in the comics, it was the first time that the X-Men faced somebody that had a personal relationship with one of the X-Men. Obviously, Magneto had a personal relationship with Charles Xavier, but that wasn't mentioned for like 20 years. Also, Juggernaut, or Cain Marko is his real name, is family. I mean, he's not blood related, but he is the stepbrother. So he is related and has known Professor X since they were children. So their feud goes back decades, which makes the relationship and their battles with the X-Men far more powerful. Now let's look at a supervillain that's not related to Marvel or DC. The Homelander. This guy appears in the comic book The Boys. This is a great series because if superheroes existed, it'd be probably very, very similar to how they work in this. Most of the superheroes have been corrupted by being famous and are more obsessed with celebrity status rather than actually saving people. We all know just how unstable a lot of celebrities are. I mean, they have hundreds of millions of dollars, yet they have addictions, suicide attempts, in rehab. Now imagine all those neuroses and insecurities and instability in Superman. Homelander is basically Superman. He has all the same powers, and he is seen as the greatest hero in the world. But that's because the government are in charge of maintaining his status. So he appears to be the greatest superhero in the world, when in fact, he is a complete lunatic. Since he is practically invincible, there's no consequences to his actions. Sometimes he just kills people because he just feels like it. Like, what are they gonna do? Arrest him? No, the government's just gonna cover it up. He's worth too much. You'd think that this guy feels like he's all powerful, but he isn't. Even the biggest, strongest people can be very, very insecure. The government government make it very clear to the Homelander that they made him. He is perceived as the greatest superhero because they want him to be, to make as much money as possible, and they can take it away if they wanted to, which makes Homelander an incredibly unstable, volatile person, who every once in a while will eat a family, incinerate a plane full of people, or decapitate a politician. And there's some other stuff he did that's way worse than that, but I can't mention it. But if you want to check that out, you can buy the boys on Amazon. Mr. Fear. I know what you're thinking, that's the dumbest name possible. Also, based on that name and how he looks, you might be thinking, isn't that a ripoff of the Batman villain, the Scarecrow? Yes, that's exactly what he is. But you know what? Thanos is a complete ripoff of Darkseid and Metron, and look how well that turned out for the Avengers Infinity War. I absolutely love Batman Begins, and I love the Scarecrow. But I just think the Scarecrow is a bit of a weedy supervillain. Batman could beat him like 2 hits. Mr. Fear, whose real name is Larry Cranston, wow, his real name is even less intimidating than Mr. Fear, is a master fighter who could easily fight 4 martial artists at the same time and can go toe-to-toe with Daredevil, who is one of the best fighters in the world. Like the Scarecrow, he uses fear gas. However, the fear gas is usually not very effective against Batman because he spent years training himself so it doesn't work on him. Not only does it work on Daredevil, it's way more effective on Daredevil because Daredevil's blind but all of his senses are amplified. So the fear gas gives him a far more powerful smell and touch and taste. So he could potentially smell the charring flesh of his dead wife, even though it's not actually happening, but he can't tell because the illusion of the fear gas is so vivid. Also, one thing I really hate is when a supervillain says, I'm not gonna kill you, I'm just gonna mess with your mind a little bit. It's like, no, just kill them because you're gonna end up in jail, you absolute idiot. Mr. Fear does this, but I love how he does this to Daredevil. He uses his fear gas on his wife, who's blind. She has an anxiety attack, freaks out, and shoves a woman onto a train track, killing her. She's forced to go to court for manslaughter. Because the fear gas is still in her system, she goes absolutely nuts, and everyone goes, well, this woman's clearly crazy. We gotta put her in a mental asylum. So they gotta dope her up to her eyeballs. And Daredevil, Matt Murdock, has to watch the woman he married literally lose her mind. And I vividly remember that bit where she's still kind of half dazed with her medication in the court, saying, oh, am I going home now? When you as a reader know for a fact that she's going to the mental institution and she's not coming back. Matt Murdock is absolutely destroyed, and he's just thinking to himself, I am going to track down Mr. Fear and I'm going to kill him. And when they battle, there's that perfect moment when he goes, you're Mr. Fear, let's see what you're afraid of. And he spews Mr. Fear with the fear gas and then throws him off a building, assuming that he will have the worst possible hallucination on the way down. But he doesn't. Mr. Fear falls in complete silence, proving that he's not afraid of anything. And with that, Matt Murdock saves him just before he hits the ground and sends him to jail. And the thing is, Mr. Fear doesn't even care. He goes to jail, goes, yeah, I did everything. Everything you accused me of, I did it. I killed these people. I orchestrated this stuff with Daredevil. That was all me. He doesn't care about going to jail. He won. He beat Daredevil. He didn't beat him in a fight, but he destroyed his life. And that is what a truly great supervillain does. But his name is still stupid. Lex Luthor. A perfect example where his greatest weapon is his mind. It's a great idea where the most physically daunting superhero of all time, Superman's greatest foe, is just a mortal man with no powers. I mean, Superman could theoretically kill him by just flicking his finger. And Lex Luthor knows Superman would never do that, which just allows him to taunt him as much as possible by preying on Superman's principles, on his friends, on his family, on his loved ones, on his allies. Although Superman has fought many physically daunting villains, Lex Luthor has caused more damage to the Man of Steel than anyone, and he can do this without throwing a single punch or firing a bullet. He has many times turned the entire world against Superman, including other superheroes, by just using psychological tactics to manipulate people for his own gain. That's one of the scariest supervillains possible because, sadly, there's a lot of people in the world today that actually do this and prey on this. Hush. Hush is a villain of Batman. See, many people think Batman is the greatest superhero because he has the best supervillains. They all have a psychological side. Two-Face has a split personality, which makes Bruce Wayne ask, what is his real identity? Is he Bruce Wayne pretend to be Batman or Batman pretend to be Bruce Wayne? Ra's al Ghul's philosophy begs the question, can the end justify the means? Ra's al Ghul's plans usually involve killing millions to solve billions. Would it be acceptable to take one life to save the world? Does this make Batman's no-kill rule a hindrance? Then there's Mr. Freeze, who symbolizes cold? Although Batman inarguably has great villains, there's one thing he's never really had: a personal villain. Somebody he's known for most of his life. Which brings us to Hush. Hush was Bruce Wayne's best friend when he was a child. There's actually 2 different backstories to Hush, but I'll talk about the more recent one. Hush, who's actually called Tommy Elliot, was friends with Bruce Wayne, then Bruce Wayne's parents died. Bruce became very reserved, and Tommy was desperate to get his friend back. He believed the reason why Bruce wouldn't talk to him is because he couldn't relate to him. So Tommy made himself relatable. He orchestrated a car accident for his parents, killing them. He then went up to Bruce Wayne's mansion, hugged him, and said, "Now we're the same." Bruce Wayne realizes that he was responsible for Tommy Elliot killing his parents. When Tommy Elliot grew up, he became the supervillain called Hush. Hush is one of the very few supervillains that knows Batman's identity, but he doesn't care about revealing it. He wants to mess with his mind. Also, a lot of Batman supervillains have another agenda. Mr. Freeze wants to resurrect his wife. Killer Croc wants to get surgery so he looks like a normal person. Hush doesn't. His main ambition is just to kill Bruce Wayne. That's all he lives for. This leads me directly into another supervillain of Batman, the Red Hood. When Hush first appeared, it was a bandaged man, and you, the reader, didn't know who it was. It was then revealed to be Two-Face, who had plastic surgery so he looked normal. However, it turns out there was a second bandaged man, and Two-Face was just wearing bandages to draw out the real Hush. And then when Hush revealed himself, it was actually Jason Todd, better known as the Second Robin, after Dick Grayson. When readers first read this, it blew their mind. The Joker killed him over 10 years ago. How the hell is he still alive? Sadly, this was a bit of a problem with DC writers. They decided this was a perfect opportunity to create a brand new character, which is why they created Tommy Elliot. And it turns out this Jason Todd was actually a decoy. Readers were so mad, the writers had to resurrect Jason Todd. I already explained how Jason Todd came back to life in my Robin video, but long story short, he came back to life because Superman punched time. The readers and Batman would safely assume the reason why Jason Todd has become this villain is because Batman failed to save him from the Joker. But it isn't. Jason Todd says to him, "You would do everything in your power to save me. I'm not upset with you because you didn't save me. I'm upset with you because you didn't kill the Joker after he killed me." Batman says, "I refuse to kill because if I did, I'm no better than the villains." And Jason Todd just so simply says, no, I'm not saying kill the Penguin, you kill the Scarecrow. Just kill him and no one else. He's never going to change. He's never going to learn, and most importantly, he will never stop killing. The Joker kills 19 people a year on average. Every time he kills somebody, that death is on you, Batman. And Batman admits, I do fantasize about killing him every day. I think about strangling him. Also, because Jason Todd was trained by Batman, he can go toe-to-toe with him. That's always been a problem with Batman. A lot of the villains like the Riddler and Scarecrow can't really fight Batman. Not only was Jason trained by Batman, he knows all of Batman's weak points. And now I'm going to talk about one of the greatest comic book stories of all time. Fables. It's not DC or Marvel, but it's an absolute masterpiece and has one of the best supervillains ever. The Adversary. Basically, it's set in the world where all the fairy tale characters, Snow White, Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Hansel and Gretel, they all exist in this like fairy tale land, but they were all kicked out by this entity called the Adversary, and they're forced to reside on our world. It takes a couple of years before you even see what the Adversary looks like, who looks like a very generic, gigantic, ironclad black knight, which was pretty much what you were expecting. But then it's revealed who the real villain is. The Adversary is really Geppetto, Pinocchio's father. The Adversary is just a big giant block of wood that Geppetto carved out, as he did with Pinocchio, and then he brought it to life using the Blue Fairy's magic. The reason why Geppetto did this is because there was just one random king in this fairy tale realm, and Geppetto's friend said, "This guy's an idiot, everybody hates him, he's gonna collapse the entire economy, we'll kill him, and then you make a wooden copy of him, and then use the Blue Fairy to bring him to life, and then you can tell him what to do, so you'll be basically in charge through him." And Geppetto's kind of like, I don't really like the idea of murdering somebody, but his friends just bully him into it. Like, every day the economy collapses, that's on you. You could stop it. He's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then he does. And they go, oh wow, the economy's gotten so much better. And then his friends are like, hey, do this other ruler, and this one, and this one. And Geppetto doesn't want to. It's like, hey, we know you did it the first time, so if you don't, we'll tell them what you did. So he's bullied into it again. And Geppetto doesn't like that his friends are forcing him to do this. He has them killed, and then replaces them with wooden copies. But then he gets terrified that someone's going to find out what he did. So he creates the concept of the Adversary. This is based on a lot of real dictators. Saddam Hussein was actually considered to be a good ruler for the first couple of years. He was given the key to Detroit, for God's sake. Gaddafi was considered a good ruler of Libya. And they very gradually became absolute monsters. It shows that he never intended to become a supervillain. He wasn't even evil to start. He just became the villain out of circumstance. He just fell into it. Some supervillains do this, but much more simply. Like, they were really good, and then one bad thing happens, and they go, I swear revenge on all of humanity. And this is a much more realistic, I don't know why I'm saying it's realistic, it's about bloody Pinocchio's dad. Relic. Relic normally fights the Green Lanterns. See, the Green Lanterns have power rings, and the Green Lantern imagines something, and they can use the power ring to create anything they want out of light, like a sword or a shield or whatever. Relic existed in the universe before the DC universe, and he figured out that the Lanterns do not have an infinite amount of energy from their power rings. This means that the more they use their power rings, they're actually using up the energy of the universe. Although Relic was a respected scientist, nobody believed him. Over time, the fabric that kept the universe together started to weaken. Although everyone realized Relic was right, it was too late, there was nothing he could do to reverse it. Since Relic preempted the destruction of the universe, he had prepared to survive into the next universe. So when his universe ended and the DC one began, Relic was preserved in this cyst-like shape. When the Green Lanterns opened it, Relic had to explain the situation, said you have to stop using the rings. Because he wasn't harsh enough, an entire universe ended. So this time, he'll be much more drastic to ensure the Lanterns never use the energy from the power rings. In the DC universe, there's not just Green Lanterns, there's lots of different Lanterns. Green Lanterns use willpower, Red Lanterns use anger, Yellow Lanterns use fear, Blue Lanterns use hope, and so on and so on. Some of the Lanterns are good and some of them are bad. Obviously the ones that use anger and fear are evil, and the ones that use hope and willpower are good. And they always fight each other to become the dominant Lantern of the cosmos. However, Relic sees all of the Lanterns as his enemies. Because of this, all the Lanterns have to ally against him. So it's quite cool to watch people who've detested each other for years have to ally against a common foe. However, since Relic knows more about the Lanterns' power than anyone in the universe, he can easily overpower them. He could just disable their power. Relic is exactly what I said about Geppetto. He is a villain that became the bad guy out of circumstance. Although he intends to destroy all the Lanterns in the universe, killing countless people, he is only doing this to ensure the survival of the universe. In his mind, he is not a terrorist, he is a scientist. And he will do anything or kill anyone he needs to ensure the survival of all existence. And now I'm going to talk about Batman's opposite. No, not that guy. Don't worry, he's on the list. Or maybe he isn't. Prometheus. He's the son of two gangsters. When he was a boy, his parents were gunned down by a police officer in an alleyway. This made him snap, and he realized the only way he could survive is if he became the best strategist, the best tactician, the greatest fighter. But unlike Batman, he cheats a little bit. His ultimate weapon is his helmet, which has a built-in drive that he can insert information like a chip or a disc. If he puts in a chip with every single martial arts known to man, he will know every martial arts known to man. He's also one of the very few people to beat Batman in a fight. He took out the entire Justice League. He didn't do it with superpowers, he just did it with superior strategy. Like Green Lantern can make any object he can visualize, so he makes Green Lantern blind. That way he can't visualize anything, making his power useless. Just before he faced Batman, he inserted the top 30 greatest fighters ever, and he says, one of them is you, Batman. So Batman needs to fight somebody that has the skill of Batman and 29 other martial artists. Okay, let's look at another supervillain that's not tied to Marvel or DC, the Plutonian. If Superman existed, he would probably turn out like the Plutonian. Plutonian has all the usual powers, super strength, flight, practically invincible, and this isn't like Homelander I mentioned earlier. He's genuinely a great person. Even the greatest, nicest person, every now and again they'll lose their temper, they might have a tantrum, but if you have that much power, a single tantrum can cause irreparable damage. One day, the Plutonian just has enough. He just kind of snaps a little bit. He's constantly getting radio waves and information from every corner, from satellites and computers, and he just freaks out and he just zips to the moon. He said, all I want is 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes of complete peace. Sadly, the exact time he decides to do that, there is a terrorist attack which kills many children. When he gets back, everyone was like, why didn't you stop it? You know it was happening. You can hear anything anywhere in the world. And he was just like, I had to get away. You had to get away from people making noise and shouting a lot? That was enough to justify you not being here and these children dying? And very gradually, this starts to change the Plutonian's mind. Was it my fault? Am I responsible for these people's deaths? But then he starts trying to rationalize it. I was like, I deserved a break. It was the first break I ever had ever as a hero. And these people complain and judge me? They should be kissing my boots. I could do anything. I could rule the world. The fact I give them this much peace and they're not even grateful for it, and just very gradually he becomes a tyrant. This is all in the story irredeemable. The funny thing is, even if you hate Superman, you'd probably really enjoy it because it's so the antithesis of what Superman represents. But it's a brilliant example of how seemingly most incorruptible superhero becomes the most evil dictator imaginable in a realistic way. I say it's realistic, but in the story, there is a gay robot that builds sex dolls. It makes sense if you read the book. It doesn't, but moving on. Cassandra Nova. Cassandra Nova is the twin sister of Charles Xavier. Kind of. Xavier is one of the most powerful psychics in the world. The greatest telepaths can send their consciousness through a psychic dimension known as the astral plane. However, the astral plane is home to non-physical parasites called Mumadrai
that prey on psychics. When Xavier's mutant gene activated in his mother's womb, a Mumudrai became aware of his existence and duplicated Xavier's cells to form a clone inside the womb with him. It intended to kill Xavier and replace him in the real world as an unstoppable psychic force. As this Mumudrai formed, Xavier's mother went into labor and fell down the stairs. She was rushed to hospital and gave birth to Charles and his clone. Although Charles Xavier survived, his twin sister didn't, and the body was disposed of. However, the Mumudrai is not that easy to kill. It spent decades reforming its body until it became an adult copy of Charles Xavier. After it fully formed, it took on the name Cassandra Nova. Her only purpose is to destroy everything that Xavier stands for. Not only does she have all the same powers as Charles Xavier, she can shapeshift, regenerate, make premonitions, and dematerialize matter. Her greatest power is her ability to control DNA. So she could weaken your own DNA, which makes you prone to diseases. She did this to Charles Xavier and gave him motor neurons disease, Alzheimer's, and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. She's the only person I've ever seen Beast terrified of. Beast obviously is the most logical and reasonable X-Men, but when he sees Cassandra Nova, he goes absolutely ballistic. Beast's greatest fear is to be turned into a mindless monster. One time Cassandra Nova degraded Beast's brain, so he lost all his higher learning functions and became mindless. She teases that she'll one day devolve him into a worm, which she can probably do. Also, Nova can duplicate anyone's DNA. If she needed to activate a door that could only be opened by one person, let's just say the American president, she could duplicate his fingerprints as well as his entire genetic structure. But the most infamous moment of Cassandra Nova is when she programmed a Sentinel to kill every inhabitant of the mutant island Genosha. The Sentinel annihilated 17 million inhabitants of Genosha, killing 99.9999% of all mutants on Earth, making Cassandra Nova the biggest mutant killer in history by far. Her only weakness is she needs a physical body. Since she's an astral entity, she can't survive in the real world unless she takes on some corporeal form. But the problem is, the X-Men just have no idea how to kill her. The Court of Owls. A couple of years ago, the DC Universe rebooted for a modern audience. Brand new Wonder Woman, brand new Justice League, brand new Superman, and of course, brand new Batman. To make this reboot work, you need to give him an iconic new supervillain. And the writer, Scott Snyder, no relation to Zack Snyder, created the Court of Owls. It's simply a Gotham version of the Illuminati. They rule Gotham from the shadows, killing anyone that interferes in their plans. They will send an assassin known as the Talon when they need to eliminate someone. The Talon is exceptional at finding its target, which is very, very scary when Bruce Wayne was targeted by the court. The Talon is just as good a fighter as Batman, so imagine how difficult it is for Bruce Wayne to fight him when he's not in his costume. They attacked Bruce Wayne at his work, at his home. They found out that he was Batman. They tried to convert Batman's son to become one of the Talons. Batman has a son, by the way. Many Batman fans say this is the best Batman story in 10 years and is one of the best Batman villains in a long time. The Joker. Did you actually think I was going to put the Joker on this? I kind of find the Joker a little bit overrated. I've read 10,000 comic books, I've earned my right to say that. Joker fights Batman, even though he has absolutely no superpowers, he somehow always gets the upper hand. Even though the Joker kills countless people, Batman doesn't kill him, he puts him in Arkham Asylum, knowing for an absolute fact that he'll be out in the street in like a month. Also, the Joker can't really develop as a character because he's just generically insane. However, I completely changed my mind during the reboot of Batman. As I said with the Court of Owls, the writers knew to really grab the reader's attention, they needed to bring in a new villain. But not only that, they had to reinvent the old ones. This wasn't just the old Joker. This Joker is disturbing. In a story, Death in the Family, he cuts off his own face, which is very unnerving to actually read these comics, as you can see his muscle tissue and flies buzzing around his dead flesh. Also, there's a huge difference with the recent incarnation of the Joker. He knows Bruce Wayne is Batman, he just doesn't care. He has no intention of revealing his identity to the world. He just wants to mess with his mind. But my favorite Joker story ever is actually one of the most recent ones, Endgame, where the entire Justice League seems to turn against Batman, all trying desperately to kill him. And then he sees Superman and sees that he has the Joker smile. Batman realizes eventually that the Joker poisoned them with a chemical that makes them desperately try to kill the people that they love the most. Which sounds exactly exactly like the type of thing the Joker would do. Batman realizes he can only cure them by creating an antidote based on the very first person the Joker infected with this poison, and he tracks him down. It's Joe Chill, the guy who killed Bruce Wayne's parents. The Joker could have picked anyone in Gotham, and he intentionally spent ages trying to track down this guy just to mess with Batman's mind. And this is why, after over 75 years, the Joker is considered to be, by many, the greatest supervillain ever. But not on my list. The Kingpin. The Batman character, the Penguin, as well as the Kingpin, are both based on Al Capone. Penguin and Kingpin, like Al Capone, are gangsters that pretend to be legitimate businessmen. Although the Penguin is a great character, I absolutely adore Kingpin because he is a perfect balance of being extraordinarily intelligent and as strong as a human being can be. Despite the fact he's massive, like he's 400 pounds of muscle, and he's about 6'8", he rarely fights because he relies on his strategy. See, that's a problem with people like the Penguin, or even Lex Luthor. When their big master plan fails, people like Lex Luthor and Penguin just go, okay, you got me, I'm done. But Kingpin doesn't do that. When he gets caught red-handed, he's always down to have one final fight. Doesn't matter who it is. Spider-Man, Red Skull, even Captain America. Also, the Kingpin uses very clever strategies to manipulate superheroes. Like in the Spider-Man film, Green Goblin's like, you should join with me and we can destroy whatever we want. And it's kind of like, why? Why would Spider-Man do that? He has no leverage over him. But Kingpin's very good at tapping into the thing that you want and then using it against you. In one Spider-Man story, Kingpin needs to take down one of his competitors known as Hammerhead. However, he can't because the police are investigating him. So he thinks, I'm going to tell Spider-Man that Hammerhead is committing extortion or moving illegal weapons or something like that in a warehouse. It's like, what's the catch? It's like, there's no catch. You're a superhero. That's what you do. Go off and catch the bad guy. It just happens to benefit me because he's one of my competitors. And Spider-Man will say, yeah, but I'm not going to help you. But then Kingpin says, yeah, but if you don't, you're complicit in the crime. You know he's going to be there. If you do nothing, you are just as responsible for the crime as that criminal. So Spider-Man has to get involved. But because he got involved due to a tip-off of the Kingpin, several superheroes think that Spider-Man is working for Kingpin, including the Punisher, who actually tries to kill Spider-Man. What would you do in that situation? Do you not go and stop the criminals selling weapons? Like what can you do? There's nothing. That's what Kingpin does. Now we're down to my final three. By a complete coincidence, they are all sympathetic terrorists who have also been superheroes at one point. My number 3 is Black Adam. What's the most powerful type of villain? You probably think a god. But Black Adam can top that. He has the power of 6 gods. In DC Comics, there's this wizard called Shazam that imbues his power into a champion. The most famous one is the superhero Captain Marvel, who has the power of 6 Greek gods. Black Adam has the power of 6 Egyptian gods. He has the stamina of Shu, the swiftness of Heru, the strength of Ammon, the wisdom of Sehuti, the power of Aton, and the courage of Mehen. Black Adam always comes across like he does have a good heart. But you see, he lives in a Middle Eastern country called Kandak, which is relentlessly attacked by terrorists. But Adam is in charge of an entire country that is surrounded by enemies. So Adam feels like he's obligated to run the country like a dictator to make his enemies too afraid to attack him. And he has done a lot of good. He has helped millions of impoverished people in the Middle East. When he realized the reason why he was given into his evil tendencies was because he had so much godlike power, he had a perfect solution. He would share his power. He found a woman that he loved and imbued her with half of his godlike power. She became Isis. He then split his power again with her brother and he became Osiris. It was the first time where Adam acted like a completely genuine good person. And then Amanda Waller killed his wife, and then he went berserk and started World War III. That's what makes him one of the best villains, because you can see that he has the potential to become one of the best heroes. Magneto. Magneto is a perfect example of how a monster can create a monster. Magneto is a German Jew. His family was killed in a concentration camp along with millions of other Jews. He was hated because he was born different. But when he learned that he was a mutant that had the power to control metal, he believed he was superior than normal humans, terrified that history would repeat itself, and he and his like, we rounded up and wiped out again, he became what he hated. A dictator. He basically wants to beat the humans to it. Before they wipe him out, he's gonna wipe all them out. But it shows an understandable way of how a person can become a monster, where Magneto was born a very, very good being, and only through constant tragedy did he become what he hated. My favorite moment of Magneto is in X-Men issue 1 in 1992. Magneto has said many times he doesn't enjoy killing humans, he just believes it's the only way to ensure the survival of his mutant race. If he knew another way for the mutants to continue living without killing the humans, he would do it. And then he figured out how to do this. He built a base called Asteroid M in space, and he said, Mutants are now going to live here. They will no longer live on Earth. You don't go to war with us. We're not going to go to war with you. Some people believe Magneto is doing this because he's about to unleash an attack on the Earth. Governments of the world unleashed their missiles on Asteroid M, which would not only kill Magneto, but would kill many, many, many innocent mutants. Now, if Magneto was a typical villain, he would just reverse the missiles with his magnetism powers and blow up all the bases on Earth. But he intentionally uses his power, trying to make sure the missiles don't land in any populated area. And in this panel, you can see Magneto screaming, shaking, crying, begging them to please stop. It's taken me all my power not to take an innocent life. That is a perfect example of someone who is doing everything in his power to be the good guy, who has become the main villain out of circumstance. Or as Colossus once perfectly put, Magneto was a great man on the wrong road. Also, most supervillains are the nemesis of a superhero for the same reason, because they hate each other. Although his ideology does conflict with Professor Charles Xavier, leader of the X-Men, they're best friends. Magneto doesn't know anyone on Earth better than Professor X. They have so much in common, except for just one thing. Professor X believes humans and mutants can live in peace. Magneto doesn't. I think pretty much everybody has a really good friend that you absolutely love them and treasure them, but there's one issue you just can't agree on. It could be to do with like homophobia or racism, politics or religion, and you can never ever change the other person's mind. And now my favorite villain of all time. Unless you're a comic book fan, there's a very good chance you have never heard of this person. My favorite supervillain ever is Sinestro. This guy is the main villain of Green Lantern. Let me stress this. The Green Lantern film is terrible, and it really irks me that a brilliant supervillain was put in such a crappy movie, so now that's all anyone's going to associate him with. It's insanely complicated to explain what a Green Lantern is, but basically, they're space cops. They have a designated place in the universe to protect. Sinestro is the greatest Green Lantern of all time. The Green Lantern of Earth, Hal Jordan, was tutored by him, and he said, "You are amazing, I would love to see what you do on your own planet." And Sinestro was like, "Of course, I'll show you how I maintain order." And he sees it, and Hal Jordan realizes that it's a totalitarian dictatorship. The people don't commit crimes because they're terrified of Sinestro. And Hal Jordan says, "This is wrong." Sinestro goes, "No, it isn't, because the Green Lanterns need to maintain order. There is order." Sinestro is a perfect Machiavellian villain. He absolutely believes that the end justifies the means. He truly believes he is a hero, and what he's doing is right. He emphasizes all the other Green Lanterns use hope and willpower, and you all failed. I used fear, and it worked. And Sinestro isn't a generic dictator. He was a really loving, caring person. He wasn't just a dictator for the sake of it. His planet was run by tyranny. There was crime all over the place. And one day, the woman he loved saw a small child caught in the middle of a crime. She ran up to save the little girl, only to realize that the little girl was actually a suicide bomber. She detonated, and Sinestro lost the love of his life. Sinestro tried to be hopeful and caring and loving, and he lost the person he loved. This to him proves it doesn't work. It has never worked for any Green Lantern, so he needs to try a different tactic, which is why he relies on fear. As I said at the beginning of this video with the Green Arrow villain Drakon, the best kind of villain is the person who makes the superhero's ability redundant. You see, a Green Lantern's power is they have a power ring and they can create any image with their mind. A Green Lantern's greatest weakness is fear. If a Green Lantern is terrified, they will not be able to concentrate to think of a construct to form with their ring. But because Sinestro can use fear more than anyone in the universe, he created a power ring that channels fear. So the Green Lantern's powers just don't work with him. Sinestro found thousands of followers who also use fear to bring order. They declared war on the Green Lanterns. This was called the Sinestro Corps War, which is, in my opinion, the best DC story ever. Since Sinestro does believe what he's doing is right, he will ally with the Green Lanterns when it suits his needs. He doesn't hate Hal Jordan. In fact, he's admitted that he's his best friend. Sinestro doesn't go around spreading fear or killing people because he enjoys it. He believes that he has to. Because of this, he's actually been seen as a hero several times. In recent comics, he saved the entire world, even when Superman and Batman couldn't do it. When I did this list, I thought to myself, who's my favorite villain? I chose Sinestro for one simple reason. If there's a story and he's in it, I'm going to read it. If there's any other comic with Prometheus or Kingpin or Black Adam or Magneto, I might go, I might give that a look. But if Sinestro's in it, I always read it. I love his backstory. I love his chemistry with Hal Jordan. I love this character. And that is my list. If there's any characters I said that pique your interest, let me know and I'll do a video about them. In the comments below, let me know who your favorite supervillains are. To learn more facts, check out my books on Amazon. They're available on paperback and Kindle. Thanks for watching. See you again.